Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Okay, we are now joined by Laura Sanko. Laura is 1-0. She made a pro debut recently for Invicta FC. How are you, Laura?
I'm great, Ray. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. We really appreciate you giving us your time for coming on and for coming on to today's show.
Oh, thank you guys.
Right, I want to talk to you a little bit about your backstory. You've got an unusual route into MMA, I suppose you could say. You've been a successful businesswoman. I know you've done well academically. So let us know a little bit of your backstory, your upbringing, and what kind of things you did after leaving education.
So I went to William Jewell College and got my degree in business administration. I originally actually went there to study music. I was a piano performance major at first, and then realized that my hands were way too small and I was way too socially active to be stuck in a rehearsal studio most of the day. So I loved music, but kind of realized I didn't want it to be my career, so I switched to business and then kind of went from there. So
I know you've had some successful business ventures. So what kind of because I know you've been labelled as an entrepreneur. So what kind of things have you done business-wise?
Right out of college, I initially worked for a global public relations firm. I actually worked for them during college as well, but then my passion had always been in startups. So it was actually my finance professor and I from Jewell who went into business together. He had a background on Wall Street and had worked with other startup companies before, and so he and I kind of hooked up business-wise, and what we did was we helped local companies find angel investors and seed investment for really, really early stage projects. So it's the best job ever. It's just really cool seeing the kind of ideas that people are coming up with and the cutting edge companies, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then one of those companies was particularly interesting to me, so I actually joined their founder to help him get it off the ground, and that was quite the adventure. So,
Out of interest, what company was that, and what did they do?
The name of the company was Adorn. It's still in business, though, on a lot smaller scale than when we were working on it. And it's a really interesting concept. They were sort of like, if you can imagine, the Netflix business model, but with real diamond jewelry. So we marketed ourselves in bigger cities where, I don't know, I guess fashion is maybe a little bit more important, and, looking good is a priority, especially for really special occasions like weddings. So we would market ourselves primarily in the wedding industry, and women could go online and pick out, maybe a $10,000 diamond necklace, and we would literally send them it in the mail with everything they needed to send it back, and they could keep it for 5 days, and then they would just put it back in the mail to us, just like you did with a DVD.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was super fun. I lived in New York City while I was working on that, and it was just a trip.
So there's a real chance for people to kind of taste the high life just for a few days, and maybe wear things that they couldn't normally afford to wear, and obviously feel good about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people don't realize unless you've been through the planning process before, but really nice costume jewelry for a wedding is pretty expensive. It's a few $100 if you get something that's really well made. And so for that, roughly that same amount, we gave people the chance to rent the real thing. So, it's sort of like going to the Oscars or going to a fancy party. It's just something fun to do. But I will tell you what, we picked a tough time to start a company like that because it was right in 2008. So, it was right when people's disposable income was taking a pretty big nosedive.
Yeah,
so I think the economy was not in our favor at the time, but
yeah, it was a good experience doing something like that, and it was obviously something. It's mad to do something so unique. So that's not something that anyone else has ever offered. So to be doing something like that is always going to be a winner, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a totally unique concept. I couldn't quite hear your entire question. I apologize. I don't know if it's my connection, but say that one more time. I heard a little bit of what you said.
Sorry, I was just saying that Would it be with that idea was so unique and nobody else was doing it? You're onto a winner just because nobody else has thought to do something like that, and obviously you're doing it.
Yeah, it's an advantage and a disadvantage. It was great because we got a lot of great PR with it being such a unique and exciting concept. But by the same token, people would hear about it and I think customers would be intrigued and we would get a lot of site traffic. But when it comes to actually trusting that this company that maybe you've never heard of is going to actually send you real diamonds in the mail, it starts to it just starts to sound too good to be true. So our conversion rate was not what it should be, but it was just working on a company and trying to build it from literally from just an idea in someone's head all the way through to a company with employees and locations and inventory. It's such a fun process. I love it.
Well, my next question is going to be, because obviously that is a hell of a path to take, and then the path you're on now is completely different. So what's taken you from that to training in mixed martial arts?
It's definitely a different path. Although I was training while I was working at that company in New York, and there were a couple of times when worlds collided, so to speak. And I remember one night I got this it wasn't a bad black eye, but it was a pretty noticeable black eye from practice. And the next day I had to meet with jewelers and clients and be all dressed up. So I just put on a ton of really, really dark eyeshadow on my other eye to try to make it look even out. And just try to use makeup to conceal it and stuff. So there were definitely times where I almost felt like I was living a double life. But at that point I wasn't, training to the level I am now. And really what did that for me was just when I left the company and moved back to Kansas City, I found the gym I'm at now, and I love it. The guys that are there are competing at the highest levels. We've got Tim Elliott, who's top-ranked 125er in the UFC. We've got James Krause, who's fought for Strikeforce and Bellator, and he's on the cusp of being brought up into the UFC. We're pretty sure, and Zach Cummings, and so we've got all these great fighters. And then when I moved back to Kansas City and was around that, was when I started to get a lot more serious about MMA. But I had been training prior to my working at this startup.
Listening to you talking about going training, getting a black eye, and then going on doing the deal, it just makes me think of Fight Club. You're like the original. You could be an original cast member of Fight Club, living the double life.
It honestly did feel that way sometimes. I really did. I mean, I would spend the morning just sweaty and gross and getting punched in the face, and then I'd run home to my apartment and get all cleaned up and go out to a fancy party for Fashion Week or something like that. It was kind of surreal, but I love having a really wide variety of experiences in life. I think that's what life is about. So it was cool.
I bet the people that trained with you couldn't see the other side to you, and I bet you the people that you wined and dined with, I bet they couldn't imagine the other side to you either. It really was literally two different people, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. The people that I trained with, they didn't really, yeah, exactly. They didn't understand, what I was doing or why I was even training if I had such a good job. And then the people on the other side of things at the fancy parties and whatnot, usually I wouldn't even bring it up because even to this day, it's almost awkward when I go to business functions and things like that, and people are just making polite talk, and they say, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And sometimes it's a great conversation stopper. Honestly, they say, "Oh, I'm a fighter. I'm a professional fighter," and people just look at you like you're nuts.
I bet half of them don't believe you. So how long did you train before you took on your first amateur fight?
It was a little while. I had no intention of fighting when I first started training. And my training was sort of sporadic. So when people ask me when I first started training, it's kind of hard to say. I first tried it out in 2007-ish, but I really just sort of dabbled here and there. And then I would say I trained somewhat seriously for maybe a year before my first fight.
And then what was your amateur record?
I was 4-1 as an amateur. I like to think of it as, I was 5-1 as an amateur. I like to think of it as 5.5 though, because I actually had one match where we went through the whole whole fight camp, and we weighed in, and we went to the venue, and my hands were wrapped, and I was all warmed up. And then the promoter came back and he said, "Hey, your opponent just left and went home."
Oh gosh.
That one pissed me off more than anything, so I feel like that should be on my record somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I know Patrick's eager to jump in, so I'm going to let Patrick take over now. You good to go, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm ready to go, Ray, and thanks again for coming on, Laura. We really appreciate your time today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you guys. I love what you guys do. It's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. So you finally made your pro debut this year. It was a really great fight. You fought against Cassie Robb on the Invicta Fighting Championships 3 card. Were you surprised that she went to try and take you down so early, considering that so many of your amateur wins were by submission?
I was a little bit surprised. I kind of, I knew that she was a grappler, but I thought, I kind of thought, well, she knows I'm a grappler too, so maybe she's going to try to turn it into a stand-up war. So, I mean, it had certainly crossed my mind. But, yeah, I would say I was a little bit surprised that, that kind of seemed to be, all that she was really trying to, to do. And she did a great job of taking me down. I got a little bit too elbow happy there against the fence for a bit. I look back at that fight. I'm so happy to have had my debut on Invicta and so happy to have done it in front of a hometown crowd. But I'm kind of disappointed with my performance, to be honest. I have a lot more skill than I was able to demonstrate in that. But, I guess that's what first pro fights are for, so.
Sure. Well, and you know what? I thought you looked very good in that fight. I mean, when she took you down, your hips were never flat. There was a moment you had like a half guard sweep, and Cassie, she ended up in mount, and then she took your back, but you got her back in a half guard, and then you eventually got her into full guard. You negated her damage, and you came down in the second round and got her down fairly quickly, and had an awesome second round rear naked choke finish.
Yeah, I was almost, absolutely no knock on her because Cassie was a great opponent, but I felt almost too comfortable, I think, in terms of the grappling part of it, and I had worked so hard in my camp on not settling for staying on my back. Because I do have a tendency I like to fight off my back, and it's not the smartest thing to do in MMA. You can win that way, but I think it just looks bad, So.
With the judging these days.
Yeah. So every time she took me down, instead of being offensive, I just kept thinking about sweeping or getting back up. So, I was a little irritated with myself for not capitalizing on a few opportunities, but, like I said, it's always a good learning, and I'm glad when things go past one round, because I think that you learn so much about yourself between rounds, and like being able to come out and have a very different type of fight versus what happened in the first round. I think that there's a lot of growth that happens from round to round.
Yeah, absolutely, and it definitely looks good, especially in your first fight, to be able to come back and work from a down position. Now, you'd also fought twice for Titan Fighting Championships before you made your debut with Invicta, and both of those are pretty big stages to start out on. How did it feel to start your career in such a successful fashion and in such a high-profile manner?
It was, I really can't. Well, first of all, it feels awesome. And I can't even take credit for so much of that. I feel like I've been fortunate in the way that I've been able to get involved with some really good promotions. Now, granted, I'll take credit for a little bit of it because I work incredibly hard at, I always make weight and I stay very professional. And so I think the promotions noticed early on that I was going to put on a good fight and, do my best to be a good business person and sell tickets and do whatever I could do to help make the promotion successful. So, I think being smart about it helped, but certainly, I was definitely blessed in terms of like Invicta being here is a great opportunity for me to be able to fight in front of my hometown crowd. So.
Yeah, that's an amazing opportunity, and you certainly made the most of it in all respects. Now, as a female fighter, do you prefer having a female referee or a male referee, or does it even matter?
I don't think think it really matters too much. That's an interesting question. That is one question I've never been asked before. So good on you. I don't think I really have a preference. The only time, I don't think that this would ever happen at the level I'm at now, but I think in some of the local shows, sometimes I do think that there's a sense that like male referees don't like to see girls getting hit. So they have a tendency of like stopping fights a little bit sooner than they would if it was two guys and one of the guys was in danger. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes they're just a little bit quicker on the trigger than they would be for guys, but at this level, I don't think that, you know, Big John or anybody like that is going to take that attitude, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've definitely got the experience up at that level that you're at now. So what are some of your non-mixed martial arts hobbies? If you're not training, if you're not working on the next business plan, what are you up to?
I love my dog. She's laying on me right now. She's a 80-pound blanket. I love spending time with my dog, and I have a horse. Unfortunately, my horse doesn't live super close to me. We have a ranch where we've got about 2,000 head of cattle, so the horse lives down there. So I enjoy going down there and doing that. I don't know. I love spending time with my husband and with my friends, and I love cooking. I would say that probably cooking and baking is my biggest hobby, but it's a hobby I have to pretty much give up as soon as I get into a fight camp because I really like sweets more than anything else.
Hey, I'm right there with you. Now, why don't you tell us a little bit about Grassy Pants Beef?
Yeah, so Grassy Pants Beef is kind of my latest venture. It was a kind of a natural thing that grew out of, you know, like I just mentioned, my husband and I have a ranch about an hour and a half south of where we live in Kansas City, and where we raise Angus cattle. And we had always kept a few cattle back for just our personal use. And then we would, you know, give some as gifts to friends and family and stuff. And more and more people started asking me about it. They wanted to buy beef from me. So I kind of just turned it into a little business and put some effort into it. And now we're selling into some of the restaurants here in Kansas City. And it's kind of fun to be able to go to a fancy restaurant and order something off the menu that, you know, you raised yourself. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Now, before we let you go, one last question. When are you looking to get back in the cage?
I really, I can't announce anything. I don't have anything officially yet, but I'm really hoping for the July Invicta. I still have several fights under contract with them, and I think that will be the logical next time frame. So I'm happy to take a little bit of time off from my last fight. It's hard for me to maintain the frenetic pace of a fight camp and still pay attention to my business and my husband and stuff. So I kind of like having a little bit of time off in between, but I'm getting antsy already to get back in there. So July will be a good time.
That's awesome. Well, we're certainly looking forward to seeing you step back in the cage for Invicta Fighting Championships. And thanks again for coming on MMA Mental today, Laura. And feel free to shout out any sponsors and let the fans know how they can follow you on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you giving me a chance to do so. Well, I'll definitely, my main sponsor is Century 21 All Pro, and they're an awesome real estate agency here in Kansas City. No Limit Wheels, definitely check them out at nolimitwheels.com. They make aftermarket wheels for ATVs, UTVs, and golf carts, and they sell internationally. So I don't know if you guys have any listeners in the UK, but you can definitely order them overseas as well. And then, I would love for people to give me a follow at Laura_Sanko on Twitter. So hit me up and ask me any questions you didn't get a chance to.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time again, Laura, and we're wishing you the best of luck going forward.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Laura. Bye.
Bye.